You are watching AI Storytelling, YTS.
They say, deep in the woods of Tennessee, a curse was born. A voice from the shadows that could speak, strike, and kill. The Bell Witch, one of America's most terrifying hauntings. Tonight, you'll hear the story that left even hardened skeptics trembling. But be warned, once you enter the Bell family's nightmare, you may never sleep the same again. They say every haunting begins with a whisper, a sound so faint, you question if you heard it at all. But in the woods of Tennessee, those whispers grew louder. And in time, they would become screams. The year was 1804. America was young, wild, untamed. In Robertson County, Tennessee, far from the bustling cities, a family arrived in search of peace. Their name was Bell. John Bell, his wife Lucy, and their children left North Carolina behind, carrying little more than faith, hope, and the dream of a new beginning. They built their home along the Red River. The land was fertile. The crops thrived. By day, the Bell farm was a place of promise. Fields of corn swaying in the breeze, the clatter of tools, the warmth of sunlight spilling across the earth. By all appearances, this was a blessed life. But Tennessee was no ordinary frontier. Its nights were longer, heavier. Its forests were deep, their silence broken only by the cries of owls. And something else, something older, something that was watching. Neighbors spoke of strange tales, witches in the woods, curses on the land, spirits that roamed when the sun fell behind the hills. John Bell, a devout Christian, dismissed such stories as superstition. Lucy, kind and soft-spoken, paid them no mind. And the children? Well, children never fear the shadows, until the shadows reach out for them. It was on nights like this, when the moon slipped behind the clouds, that John thought he saw movement. Shapes among the trees. Shadows that seemed to breathe. He would stare, his eyes straining against the dark. But when the lantern light fell across the woods, there was nothing, except the sound. A knock against the wall, a scraping beneath the floor. At first, John told himself it was animals. A fox, perhaps? A rat? But deep down, he knew this was no animal. In the quiet isolation of Tennessee farmland, where nights stretched on like eternity, the line between the living and the dead blurred. And the Bells were about to discover what happens when something crosses that line. At first, it was nothing. Little sounds, easy to explain. A faint scratching beneath the floorboards, a tapping on the walls late at night. The Bells had lived in Tennessee long enough to know the land was alive with animals. Rats in the walls, foxes in the fields, wind rattling against wood. It was nothing to fear, or so they thought. But the knocks did not stop. They grew louder, more deliberate, like fists pounding against the wood. John Bell would open the door, step into the night air, hold his lantern high, and see nothing but empty fields and the tree line shifting in the dark. The sounds followed them into their sleep. Lucy would wake to the scratching of claws beneath her bed. The children whispered of voices in their rooms, voices that hushed the moment an adult entered. At first, John prayed. Then, he began to worry. Then, the noises became touch. The youngest daughter, Betsy, complained of being pinched, her hair pulled by unseen hands. Sometimes she woke with welts upon her cheeks, red handprints stinging against her skin. The family searched for answers, but there were none. And then the voice began. It started with mutters, faint, Unclear. But then, one night, as the bells bowed their heads to pray, the spirit joined them. It recited the prayer word for word, its tone sharp, mocking, twisting sacred words into a cruel game. This was no mere haunting. This was intelligence, a presence that spoke, listened, and laughed. Neighbors drawn to the mystery. The noises could no longer be denied. Those who came to the house heard it for themselves. Knocks, voices, even the sound of chains dragging across the floor. The Bell home became a place of curiosity and dread. The faithful carried scripture. The fearful stayed far away. But none could deny something lived there. And the voice grew bolder. Sometimes it sang. Sometimes it cursed. It mocked John Bell relentlessly, calling him names, threatening him. And always, it promised worse to come. The spirit fixates on Betsy. Of all the Bell children, it was Betsy the spirit tormented most. She was only a young girl, but she became the center of its cruelty. She was pinched, scratched, even beaten by invisible hands. Her cries echoed through the farmhouse at night. No matter how tightly Lucy held her daughter, no matter how loudly John prayed, the torment never ceased. By now, it was clear. This was no wandering spirit. This was a force. Intelligent, malevolent. It spoke, it touched, it threatened. And though it tormented Betsy, its true hatred was for John Bell. A hatred so deep, so consuming, that it would not stop until he was destroyed. The Bell family knew they were not alone, but what lived in their home was unlike anything they or anyone in Tennessee had ever faced, for this spirit could speak. It began as mutters in the shadows, then it grew louder, clearer, until finally, one night, it spoke the family's names aloud. The spirit's voice emerges. When the Bells prayed, it prayed with them. Every word perfectly repeated, but the voice did not sound holy. It was sharp, twisting scripture into mockery, turning faith into fear. The children wept in terror. Lucy gripped her Bible until her hands shook. But John stared into the darkness and for the first time realized this was not a haunting. This was a war. The spirit had a mind. It laughed, mocked, even argued. At times, it sang hymns. At others, it cursed with venom. It seemed to know the family's secrets, things no outsider could know. And when neighbors gathered to witness it, the voice spoke to them as well. It was impossible to deny. They could all hear it, loud as any living person. And though it could charm, even joke, beneath its words, there was always malice, torment of the family. It had favorites for its torment. Betsy, the young daughter, was slapped, pinched, and dragged by her hair. Night after night, she cried in agony. No lock, no prayer, no comfort could protect her. Strangely, it showed a twisted form of respect for Lucy Bell, calling her the most virtuous woman alive. Yet this affection did nothing to protect her children, nothing to save her husband. John Bell, the head of the household, became its greatest enemy. The spirit cursed him, threatened him, promised his death again and again. His once strong frame began to falter. His hands trembled. He aged before his time. The witch's hatred burned only for him, and it would not stop until he was destroyed. By now, word of the haunting spread beyond the Red River. Ministers, farmers, skeptics, and thrill seekers all came to the Bell farm to hear it for themselves. And they did. Some nights, the witch recited sermons, word for word, mocking preachers. Other nights, it gossiped about townsfolk, revealing their secrets. No one was safe from its tongue. The Bell home became a theater of the damned. Some came for proof, some for curiosity. All left knowing the same truth. The Bell Witch was real, and it had no intention of leaving. Foreshadowing the darkness to come, the voice was no longer content with whispers. It made its intentions clear. It had chosen its victim. It would break him, and one day soon, it would kill him. The Bell Witch hated many, but it saved its greatest torment for one, the Bell's young daughter, Betsy. She was just a child, innocent, kind, and yet, night after night, the spirit made her its prey. Physical attacks begin. It started with pinches, little bruises she could not explain. Then it grew bolder, slaps, hard and stinging, that left red marks on her skin. Her hair was pulled, her body dragged across the floor by forces no one could see. Her screams filled the house. Lucy tried to hold her child, shielding her with prayer, with love. But the blows did not stop. The witch wanted Betsy to suffer. And nothing, no hand of mother or father, could protect her. The torment wasn't only physical. The witch whispered to her when no one else could hear. Dark words, cruel words. Betsy grew pale, withdrawn, the laughter of a child replaced by fear. And the more she resisted, the stronger the spirit seemed to grow. The broken engagement. When Betsy grew older, she found happiness. A young man named Joshua Gardner asked for her hand in marriage. For a brief time, the house seemed lighter. Betsy dared to dream of a future beyond the haunting. But the witch had other plans. The voice grew relentless. Every night, it mocked her, warned her, cursed her. When she met Joshua in secret, the witch followed. It shrieked in her ears, screamed until she wept. And soon, Betsy could take no more. The engagement was broken. Betsy's heart was shattered, and in her sorrow, the witch rejoiced. The witch's grip on Betsy's life. No one could explain why the spirit despised her happiness so deeply. Some said it was jealousy. Others said it fed on her pain. But one thing was certain: Betsy's suffering was its greatest delight. Night after night, Betsy begged for it to end. But the more she begged, the louder the laughter became. The torment of Betsy was only part of its cruelty. For every scream, every tear cut deeper into John Bell's soul. He could not protect his daughter. He could not save his family, and the witch knew it. It had broken Betsy's spirit, and soon it would come for John's life. The wider community and fame, what began as whispers within the Bell home, soon spread beyond its walls. The sounds, the voices, the torments, neighbors heard them. Friends witnessed them. And soon, the story of the Bell Witch became more than a family's curse. It became a community's fear. Neighbors hear the witch. Brave ones came to prove the Bells wrong, to expose the haunting as lies or hysteria. But one by one, they left shaken. Some heard the mocking voice for themselves. Some saw Betsy struck down by unseen hands. Some swore the spirit whispered their darkest secrets aloud. The Bell home became a gathering place for the curious and the terrified alike. Some carried Bibles, some carried pistols. None made a difference, for the witch feared neither scripture nor steel, the spirit's mockery of preachers. Even men of the cloth came, determined to drive the spirit out. But the witch only mocked them, reciting their sermons back, word for word, twisting holy scripture into taunts. Ministers left humiliated, powerless. The witch seemed to grow stronger with every defeat. The witch becomes a legend. Word spread like fire across Tennessee. A spirit that spoke, a witch that cursed, a family torn apart. The Bell's farm was no longer just land. It was legend. And as the story grew, so did the visitors. In 1819, the legend drew the attention of a man who would one day become the President of the United States, General Andrew Jackson. He had heard the tales and scoffed at them. A witch that spoke? A spirit that struck the living? Impossible. So Jackson and his men traveled to the Bell farm to see the truth for themselves. But as they approached the Bell home, the horses froze. No whip, no spur could move them forward. The soldiers cursed. Jackson frowned. And then, a voice drifted through the night. The men begged to leave. Jackson refused. But as night fell, the witch made her presence known. She mocked the soldiers, called them cowards, tormented them until their nerves broke. By morning, Andrew Jackson himself demanded retreat. He left Robertson County, declaring the stories true, and the Bell Witch's fame became immortal. The witch's power beyond the farm. The Bell Witch was no longer confined to the Bell's land. Stories spread through the Red River Valley. Tales of people hearing whispers in the woods, of travelers harassed by unseen forces on lonely roads, became the air itself. No one dared walk the fields at night. No one dared speak against the witch aloud. The witch had mocked preachers, humiliated generals, terrified an entire community. But through it all, its focus never wavered. It always returned to John Bell, the man it hated most, the man it vowed to destroy. Through years of torment, one truth never changed. The witch hated John Bell. It whispered his death. It promised his ruin. And as the nights grew longer, John felt the curse tighten around him. John Bell's decline. He grew weaker. His hands shook. His voice faltered. The strong farmer, once respected by all of Robertson County, became a shadow of himself. Doctors found no cause, but the witch had already spoken. "I will kill John Bell." The family watches in horror, helplessly as the witch mocked his every attempt at peace. If he prayed, it mocked him. If he read scripture, it spat curses over his words. His own children begged it to stop. But nothing silenced the voice. Violence increases. The blows grew harsher. He was tripped, slapped, struck down by invisible hands. His health declined rapidly. Some said it was sickness. Others whispered the witch was draining the life from him. Day by day, the witch's public declaration. It made no secret of its hatred. To anyone who visited, it declared the same promise. John Bell's days were numbered. The community, powerless, could only wait and fear. On the morning of December 20th, 1820, Lucy Bell discovered a strange vial by her husband's bed. A dark liquid. She had never seen it before. When the family questioned the witch, it laughed. John Bell? was dead. The witch rejoiced. It sang. It laughed. It mocked the family through their tears. And neighbors swore they heard the voice celebrating John Bell's death for miles across the valley. Even at his funeral, the witch would not rest. As earth fell upon the coffin, its voice rang out, mocking, cackling, declaring victory. The community, shaken to its core, left the graveyard knowing the Bell Witch had done what no spirit before it ever claimed. It had killed a man. Bell family was never the same. Betsy remained scarred by years of torment. Lucy carried her grief like a shadow, and the name of John Bell became etched forever in American history as the only man claimed to be killed by a spirit. John Bell was dead. The witch had kept its promise. But the nightmare was far from over. For though the man was gone, the spirit remained. The family prayed for peace. They hoped the curse would end with John's death. But the whispers continued. The laughter echoed in the dark halls. Betsy was still slapped, still mocked, still told she would never escape. The spirit fades, but not forever. Without warning, the witch grew silent. The Bell home, once alive with shrieks and screams, fell into uneasy quiet. Days turned into months. Some dared to believe it was over. The family tried to rebuild what little life they had left. But just as hope returned, the voice came again. The witch's promise. It left with a vow. 7 years. That was the promise. And with it, the Bell family lived not in peace, but in dread. 7 years later, true to its word, the witch returned. Not with the same fury as before, but with whispers, with shadows, with reminders that it was never gone. Some said it foretold the future. Some claimed it warned of death. Others swore it only came to remind the Bells. It still owned them. As years passed, the story did not fade. Parents warned their children never to wander near the old Bell land. Travelers swore they felt eyes watching them as they crossed Red River. The name of the Bell Witch became eternal. They say the Bell Witch never left, that her laughter still echoes through the Red River Valley, that if you walk the old Bell land at night, you may hear knocking, you may hear whispers, you may even hear your own name. 2 centuries later, no one knows if the Bell Witch truly vanished, or if she's still waiting for her next victim. The Bell Witch story has never truly ended. Some say she still lingers in the dark corners of Tennessee, waiting, watching, perhaps listening even now. And if you want to hear more stories that the night dares to keep, join us again. Subscribe to AI Storytelling YTS for more videos.